Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Our very first official office hours, where each week I get to talk to you about the military transition topics that are important to me and really highlight some of the companies that are doing a lot for our community. In that line, I know you saw our slide when you were dialing in with some of our sponsors. I'd like to highlight the first of three sponsors we're going to talk about today. The first one is Veteran Service Brands. And, I have a script to read on this, but I'm not good at that kind of stuff. Let me just say what makes Veteran Service Brands special is that every one of their franchises is owned by a veteran. It is a requirement to own a franchise. And so when you think about the opportunities across the country for G-Force parking lot striping, when you talk about Paint Corps, commercial and residential painting, when you talk about field ops, athletic field markings, think about pickleball, think about soccer. They even did a cool NFL combine like one. And then you think about Mach 1 epoxy floors. I saw the team in action for our CEO, Nick Gizandi's house, and they just did an amazing job. And so when I think about who I would hire to do those things, the first name that comes in mind is the veteran-owned business. And so I'd encourage you to take a look at Veteran Service Brands. And if you're considering owning a business or a franchise, I will tell you that every one of those franchise owners I spoke with, and I don't make stuff up, told me that it changed their lives for the better. And so I would encourage you to keep an eye out for them. So now let's get into the fun stuff where I don't have Lucy Robinson to kind of tone things down. I can say whatever I want in a nice way, I guess. I'm going to tell you that each week we're going to talk about the topics that are important to me, the things that come up in conversations. And some of them are going to be a little raw, but in a good way. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is, while you're participating today, if you have any questions, anything that you want to talk about, go ahead and drop it in the comments. And Olivia Perez Breland, who's running this, will go ahead and mark them for us, and I'll bring them up if they're appropriate. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is I started something special today, something new, something I've been working on for a while. And I know there's a lot of talk in the transition about some ranks having it easier than others, and some ranks have it harder than others. And I'm going to tell you that that's a bunch of bunk, that every transition is uniquely personal, and that every transition has its own difficulties. The higher rank you get, the less jobs are available for you. And the earlier you start in a career, the more of the world is opened up, right? I teach all the generals and admirals, and I teach a whole bunch of the most senior SELs, the E9s out there. And I will tell you that the opportunities for them at their level, at their age, are less. And depending on how high you go, you get limited time after you're out of the seat to go find a job. And so as part of my way of giving back, is I've started a newsletter that's going to come out bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks on Wednesdays, called Beyond the Stars. And I encourage you all, we had about 18,000 people subscribe yesterday when I launched it. But Beyond the Stars is going to highlight a transitioning general officer, admiral, or E9 working at that level to our community. Give you some insight into who they are, what they want to do, what they've done, a little bit of the personal side, and some photos. And it's just my way of helping them connect in a way they haven't been able to for the rest of their job. So I encourage you to go over and sign up for our newsletter and check it out. I really enjoyed it. The first episode was Vice Admiral Yancey Lindsay. He was the commander of Navy Installations Command. And he actually brought me out to speak to his installation commanders twice over 2 different years to talk to them about promoting the Navy, being active on LinkedIn, networking with intent, and creating programs that support the transition of his sailors. So I was super happy to support Vice Admiral retired Lindsay. Now I call him Yancey, with his transition. His golf swing needs a little help, and just reintroduce him to everybody, let him know that he's looking for what's next. All right. So that's enough about the newsletter. I've got some other topics. So the first thing, the hot button topic of this week, my most viral post, is about staff time being more valuable in the transition than command time, right? Because staffs actually have to do stuff. And, it went viral. There was a lot of conversations, mostly agreeing with me, but I want to make sure people understand where I'm coming at with this. I am not saying that commanders, command sergeant majors, command master chiefs, chief master sergeants, I'm not saying that they don't do work. And I'm not saying that they don't have an incredible impact on the organizations. And I'm not saying they're not incredible leaders. Like, all of that is there. They are. What I'm saying is that when we look at hiring in the private sector, there's always the part of what did you do? And our structure in the military is that the highest leaders set vision, implement management controls, and make sure that everybody else is doing the stuff needed for the organization to roll effectively, right? So if you're going to say as a commander that you improved retention, right? I improved retention in this organization by 30%. And then I say, okay, how? What is the answer I get? For most command teams, it's going to be that you managed the person that did it, or the people that did it, or I gave instruction, or I did that. It's not that you actually went out and talked to every person and gave them specific incentives or decided what the incentives were, right? You kind of set the vision and told people what to do it. Okay, well, what about, you improved readiness? How? Tell me what you did, right? And so that's where the challenge is. There's not a lot of specific tasks, quantified accomplishments that come with those command roles that show what you did. And for the ones where there is, then there's the additional step of it having to be tied to profit and loss, P&L. So those things are all great. How did it make money? Because in the military, the saying, you can spend 90% of your time on 10% of the people. You can't do that in the private sector. You can't do that. You're going to lose so much money, be out of a job. And so I just want people to understand I'm not devaluing command in any way, shape, or form. I never worked harder and was more fulfilled than when I was a command sergeant major. But my time, and you can even check out my profile, I left some of the bullets in there. My time as a G3 sergeant major at INSCOM enabled me to do so much more. And that's what I want you to understand. And the beauty of it is you have a mix of assignments, a mix of experience. You have a lot of things that you've done in your career. If you take the time to talk to people in the private sector, figure out what they do, what their priorities are, what their biggest challenges are, right? Where they spend their time, what metrics they track. If you take the time to figure that out, I guarantee you, especially if you've been in 10, 15, 20 years, I guarantee you, if you look into your background, you can find times you did that. And that's what I'm trying to say, is just understand that when we're interviewing you and we're saying, tell me about a time when it's got to be a time that you did it, not that you were responsible for. So I encourage every transitioning service member to really sit down and talk to people in the private sector, run their answers by them, use the interview prep tool, hit the jobs tab, interview prep, record yourself answering a question, send it to people and see where it takes them, right? Always be flexible, be humble, and do what it takes to find your success. So the next one, let's talk about contracting, government contracting. A lot of transitioning military and recent veterans and military spouses even go into the government contracting world. And a lot of people are applying for jobs. And I want to make sure everybody understands how the government contracting world works when it comes to offers. So there's questions I want everyone to ask before you accept a job offer. And of course, you never stop looking until you've actually started in the job. And even then, you keep networking because you never know where things are going to happen. But when a company reaches out to you about a contracting job, or you apply online for a contracting job and you get in touch with that recruiter, there's certain things that I want you to be focused on learning. So the first thing is, does your company already have this contract? Are you working on it? Or is there a start date, right? And what I mean by that is that when companies, government contractors bid on work, there are key personnel, resumes they have to recruit, they have to include in the proposal. And then if it's a large contract, they've got to start staffing some of it in case they win, because they have a short turnaround time to run it to get started. And so they'll start staffing some certain positions in case they win. Now, the problem with that is it's a contingent offer, contingent upon winning the contract. And I'll tell you that a very good chance, we call it P-win, probability of win, for contracts is about 30%. 30% chance of winning. And so you want to make sure that the contract is already won, and that if you accept the offer, that you're going to start working there, right? I'm not saying don't accept contingent offers. I just say treat contingent offers like a lottery ticket. You got your lottery ticket, you picked your numbers, and you sit it over here and see if your numbers hit. And if they do, great, you got a job. If not, all right, we'll do it again. So the first thing you want to ask in a contract is, do you have this work? Has it already been awarded? The next thing you need to ask is, what is the period of performance? How many years are left on this contract? So that means, like, typically it could be 1 year base, like the government gives them 1 year, and then there's 4 option years. That means it's typically a 5-year contract. Things can change, but it's typically a 5-year contract if everybody performs. So if it might be year 4, and there may only be 10 months left, and you have to decide whether it's worth it to take that job or not. I will say that there are some, if another company wins the contract, they do a lot of income capture. So people that have worked on it, with the exception of the leadership. So there is potential, but it could lead to you having to give back money. Maybe they bid lower to win it, and you have to take less money to keep the job. It could be changing your benefits. Somebody reminded me that you will have to change over your 401k most likely. There's a lot of things involved there. So I want you to ask how much time you have left on the contract when you're doing that. Then the other question is, are you the prime or are you a sub? So the prime is the contractor that won the contract. A sub is a member of their team. And typically that just impacts, performance, reliability. I mean, if the government reduces a role and the prime has to choose whether they give back a role or whether a sub gives back a role, guess who's giving back that role? The sub, right? Because the prime won the contract. So they're not going to give up all that money to somebody else. And so it's just important to know that from an operations standpoint, from a reliability standpoint. Then the next part is there a bench? A lot of people don't really realize what this is. The bench is, if the contract goes away, do you have a job? Meaning, do they keep people on staff that are not doing billable work, 100% billable on the contract? And this is just helping you make a better, more educated decision. So the large consulting companies like EY, Booz Allen, Deloitte, all those companies have a bench of some way, shape, or form in most cases. And if you're a high performer, they'll keep you. But a lot of other companies can't afford to suck up that salary and pay you when you're not billable, in which case you would be gone. And there has to be money has to come from somewhere to pay the salaries. So always ask that from the company, or do some research, check on it. And then, I just, again, want to hit on the contingent offer. Don't ever move for a contingent offer, right? I've run into junior enlisted service members in the DC area that have been waiting 6 months for a contingent offer based on their clearance getting over or whatever, and not getting any money, burning through their savings. And so, again, if it's a contingent offer, negotiate like a real offer, great practice. Sign that offer letter and then keep looking. If it wins, you're not on a hook to take the job. If you have something better, maybe you get to decide either way. So think about it that. All right. So we're at the midpoint. We've got a few more topics to discuss, and hopefully if you have some questions, you'll bring them up. But I want to highlight our second of 3 Tier 4 alliance partners, Acuity International. So Acuity International is a really cool one. They do a lot of overseas work. So they do mission continuity and stabilization. And what they do is they hire a lot of veterans to go overseas and do like intelligence, security, the healthcare type jobs. And for right now, they have some great jobs in Iraq and Somalia. So, I know a lot of people that get out and want to kind of get back in the fight. They really enjoyed those deployment times because they can go overseas and they could just like sit on the money and just bank and do something they love doing for a couple years. Well, that's Acuity International right now. So we've got some amazing roles in Iraq and Somalia overseas. So I would encourage you to take a look. Go to the Hire Military website, hiremilitary.us. Check out our open recs, and you'll see those positions right there. You can also join our talent pool. We've got at hiremilitary.us, we've got a internship talent pool for guys and gals, service members that are looking for Skill Bridge or Career Skills Program internships. You could join our talent pool, and our team will always search that to see if there's something that would fit you. We look for your branch of service, what you want to do, where you want to go, timelines, and it opens things up a lot right there. You could also join our talent pool for work, actual jobs. And that's where we'll find people for these roles. And I know Lucy, Amber, and the team are always searching for great talent. So again, Acuity International, Iraq and Somalia roles. Now, all right, I've got a couple more topics. Hopefully some of you have questions, you'll jump in. But the first topic is metrics. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I've seen people fail to pay attention to metrics and be blindsided when it doesn't work out for them at an organization. And so what I mean by metrics is people give it a bad name or they think about it the wrong way, but everything out here has to be monetary driven. Whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a for-profit, whatever, the money to stay in business, to pay your salaries, to maintain your offices, the money to operate a business has to come from somewhere, right? You need to be able to bring in revenue to keep your business functioning and pay everyone. Now, there are two basic types of roles in the private sector. There are revenue generators, so roles that bring in money, and then there are cost centers, which are overhead costs by the business that don't bring in money. So think revenue generators could be contractors, they could be sales personnel, they could be consultants, anything that they're going out and doing work and they are bringing money into the business. The cost centers are your internal recruiters, your HR personnel, your finance and accounting, some of your leadership, they're cost centers, right? And so there's two ways you have to look at your metrics. So I'm going to do the revenue generators first, right? So you factor in your total compensation package, right? What you cost the company. And I will tell you that you will at a low end cost your company about 140% of your salary. And what I mean by that is that, hold on one second. Murphy's Law, my kids came to the door right when I was in the live and it wasn't unlocked. So what I talk about is how much do you cost the company? So the company pays your salary and then just your benefits, taxes, 401k, other costs is about 40%. If you factor in overhead, it could be 60% or more, right? Depending on the size of the company, the benefits package, and everything else like that. So that means if your salary is $100,000 a year, then you cost the company maybe $160,000 a year. That means just for them to break even, you're looking at about $160,000 of money coming in. And to be safe, you always want to aim for about 200%, so 200K. And so that's your revenue generators, understanding how much you cost the organization. And you can actually figure this out with your specific company with the wrap rate and everything else, and how much you bring in. And that's how you know whether you're safe or not. For the cost centers, your overhead, you don't bring any money in. So what you have to factor in is like, what happens if I leave? Who does the work? And what is my production? How am I supporting either money being generated, or how am I saving the organization money? How am I saving time, energy, profits? How am I supporting the business? And I'll tell you that when you see the layoffs, and a lot of these layoffs have been going on, the vast majority I've seen have been cost centers, which probably means the company hasn't been making the money that they expected, and they have to almost tighten the belt a little bit. And so I'll tell you that it's very important for you to keep a track of your metrics, personal, like your I Love Me book in the military. The example I used this week was my time at EY, what metrics I had to track. And we had a system. I mean, it was very, like, I knew whether I was green or red. So my salary was this. I knew I was at like probably 140, 150, 160, where I had to be, like, from a percentage standpoint, not my salary. And I had to track things like my utilization rate, which is the number of hours that I billed every week. So it's the percentage. I think I started off at 20 hours a week. I went up to 24, and then I went up to 30 over my time there for the amount of billable time. And really that was to cover my salary. Then you went down to your managed revenue, which is the amount of revenue that your team generated. And these are like your direct reports on a contract. So I had to track that what they were generating and what the max they could generate. I had to get as close to that number as possible because I can maximize profits, right? So that's your managed revenue. I had to talk about my revenue goals. I had a number on every year with my leadership. This is what your revenue goals are for driving new business. And I had to track what my pipeline is, the stuff that I was bidding on, and I had to track how much I'd actually done and do that. And then the last part is the team goals. And the team goals were other people's pursuits that I supported. So if I helped somebody else win money for the firm, then I tracked that in my team goals. And it wasn't as weighted heavily as the ones that I did, but it was weighted for the ones that it was weighted to help support, because they put me in the system as someone that played a key role in them winning, right? And that's the stuff so if you look at that, and you can get in the system and track all these numbers, I knew how much money that I generated the firm every year, and I knew how much I cost the firm every year. And if I was significantly in the green, as long as you didn't really just be a jack, not name Jack, but you know what I'm going to say, is you were pretty much safe, right? You knew you were comfortable there. It was the people that were marginal, or the people that thought they were strategic hires, that really struggled. And so you got to understand the money's got to come from somewhere, and you got to be able to show your impact. And then the last thing I want to talk about as we approach 30 minutes is translating rank. The first place it seems like everybody starts the transition is I have to write a resume. And I'm going to tell you that the whole concept is skewed and backwards, because a resume is for a specific job. But what everybody thinks they're writing a resume is they're just capturing everything they did in the past on a piece of paper, ideally 1 to 2 pages, to try to make themselves do what? I don't know, right? That's the problem. I got to write a resume is the first step. Wrong. You got to figure out what jobs you want to apply for. So what people end up doing is basically writing a resume for their current job. Like for me, it was a G3 sergeant major at a 2-star command. That was all it was the stuff that got me to there. It wasn't the next job. And so the first thing I'm going to say is you don't start your transition process with a resume. You're making a garbage document. You can collect everything up so you have all your stuff together. You can go back your awards and your evals and all that stuff and collect the bulletized accomplishments, but it's not a resume. Just put it on a random Word doc and just leave it there. A resume is written with a job in mind. So if you're going to apply for this HR director role, right, at a tech company, then you have to write to those requirements. That's tailoring, right? You have to write it to those requirements. And so once you figure out what you want to do, you can write to that role. But now here's the other problem that I see. I see people translating their rank to an equivalent rank in the private sector. I see a lot of senior leaders getting out saying they're looking for vice president, director, senior manager roles. What? Those aren't jobs. Vice president of what? Senior manager of what? Director of what? You get, it doesn't make sense at all. C-suite leader, executive leader, all these aren't real things. And so what I have to constantly tell people is you have to figure out what you want to do. You have to learn what people in that job do every day, what their priorities are, what their challenges are, what metrics they track. And when you talk to 5 or 10 people in that role, it is easy for you to write a resume because you know what they're looking for. So when it comes to starting your transition, what I'm going to tell you is that your profile, you don't need a resume. You don't need a resume until you start applying for jobs 2 to 3 months from the day you can start. Get your profile to reflect who you are now. It's that simple. Your picture, you smile, and you can be in uniform, out of uniform, whatever. Your headline is your current title. I tell people put their rank before their first name. It opens up a lot of doors. Tells me at a glance you're military, not trying to sell me something. You've got your about section, which highlights your experience, the scope of your experience over X number of years. And then your last job's going back no longer than about 10 years, right? Go back as far as is relevant to what you want to do next. Get your stuff lined up that way so it looks exactly like your professional identity right now. And then start networking. Start reaching out to people in industry to learn more about what they do, what their challenges are, what metrics they track, what they love about the job, how they got their job, where you would fit in that industry. And once you've had enough conversations and you've crossed out the ones you don't want, which is a success, you can say, I don't want to be a project manager. I hate that stuff. Oh, I'm not good at as an internal HR asset because I'm not PC. I don't want to chase around hourly worker in operations. Oh, HR consulting. They're paying you to tell them what's wrong and how to fix it. Well, that's what a sergeant major does. Ding. Now I talk to 10 HR consultants and I can advocate for myself that way. I can say why I'm a best candidate. That is how we start the transition. So make your profile, no translations, who you are. Focus heavily on networking with people in fields that interest you to learn more about what they do. And then when you have enough and you have a good pool of 3 to 5 mentors you can call, start translating then. Start highlighting the important stuff then. And I guarantee you will find your success. All right. So the last of our 3 big sponsors for this office hours is GBC Food Services. One of the biggest companies you haven't heard of, but I guarantee you, every time you go into a supermarket, you see some kind of a kiosk. And what do I mean by kiosk? You see a sushi stand. You see sandwich stands, or where the lunch meat's already sliced, or you see the cut produce, cut fruits and stuff like that, right? For most of the larger supermarkets across the country, those are not the supermarket doing it. Those are vendors. Those are franchises that are running those. And so GBC Food Services has sushi. They have Boar's Head Deli, and they have cut fruits and produce franchises all over the country. And this is what's exciting about this is you can go do it as a franchise on your own. But what really has me excited is there's a skill bridge opportunity in over 200 locations. And so using the DoD Skill Bridge or Career Skills Program, you can go run a franchise. Everything you would do if you bought it, you run a franchise for 3 to 4 months. You get to learn what the day's like. You get to learn where everything is, how to do it. You get to manage the finances and everything. And at the end of those 3 to 4 months, you really get a chance to see if you want to do it. You'll know how much you make or how much you will make. You'll know what the work-life balance is like, what the room for growth is, and what kind of resources you have access to. And you can actually take the franchise at that point. And they have some great programs to help you do that timely, efficiently, and cost efficiently, I guess. And so I would encourage you to go to hiremilitary.us and check out the GBC food service opportunities, and both internships and jobs. I mean, I just really don't think there's another program out there like that. And then the last thing I'll tell you is that I was given a reminder by Lucy Robinson to mention some roles to you. So I will tell you that we have 2 cohorts, AWS, Amazon Web Service Solution Architects. I will tell you that in 3 to 5 years, you'll be making well over 200K, or you have the potential to make well over 200K. These are training cohorts through SkillBridge, and it's combined. So the first 3 months, you go through a SkillBridge training program to get prepped for everything. The last 3 months is paid. So $35 an hour paid training. The whole 6-month training program is remote, but at the end of the program, you have to take a job in either DC or San Antonio, and all that'll be lined up before you sign to do the training. But I will tell you that what separates this program from anything else is that not only do you get the training and certifications at no cost, no GI Bill, they actually put you right into a job. So that's like why I say 3 to 5 years is once you have 2.5, 3 years of experience doing this, you can look up AWS Solutions Architect and look at the years of experience. You'll see what those salaries are. Now, for this specific group, you need to have a top secret clearance. No wiggle room. If you don't have a top secret clearance, you're not eligible, right? You have to be able to work and be willing to work in either San Antonio or DC. There's no wiggle room. You have to be able to do it. So don't message, I'm interested. Don't send us notes, say, hey, is there wiggle room? Don't say, hey, can we do it somewhere else? Like, that's it. If you meet those qualifications, you're open for SkillBridge. And the 2 cohorts we have available are starting in September and November, right? If you're open for either of those SkillBridge cohorts, starting there for 3 months, you have a top secret clearance, you're willing to do full-time, 40 hours. These are not jokes. With great salary comes great expectations or great responsibility. So if you're willing to do all of this, I'll tell you it's a life-changing opportunity. Go ahead and look this up on the hiremilitary.us website, or reach out to Lucy Robinson or Amber Pitkin and just let them know that you are interested in learning more. And then there's one more I'm supposed to mention, even though I'm 3 minutes over, and that is entry-level software developers. We've got a remote 12-week training program. The role is in DC. I think this is now, like starting ASAP. You must have some object-oriented, I don't even know what that is, programming experience. For example, C, whatever that is, C with like the pound symbol, C++, Java, or Python. And so if you're interested in that, that'll be on hiremilitary.us, the job section. But keep that in mind. And then I see we have a comment as I close out from Sean Edwards. He says, good stuff, Mike. I quickly found out how senior manager, director, and similar job titles do not mean much. Spot on with tailoring resumes and speaking to folks in the field you want to work in. Great. I mean, at the end of the day, the roles out here are aligned to a specific field. And, the generalist won't get as far. But what I'll tell you is that, going back to the titles, going back to the command time, some people probably had their feathers ruffled when I say command time's not worth as much out here because you're not doing stuff. But what I'll say is that you've had other assignments that prepped you, and that once you get out here in the private sector and you understand P&L, or you understand the specific field in which you work and how it ties to business goals, that command time is invaluable. That leadership time will accelerate your growth exponentially because you have the experience with leadership, with building teams, and reaching a common goal. It's just, you need to fill a couple gaps for that to really come into effect. So with that, just a reminder, if you get a chance, subscribe to my newsletter, and we will be live next Thursday, 2 p.m., with a whole new batch of topics and hopefully a whole bunch of new visitors. So thanks again, and have a great weekend, everybody.